Connectivity plays a critical role in every community's infrastructure. This pandemic has driven the adoption and increased usage of many ICT services that have enabled consumers to build a new normal, all underpinned by connectivity. Now, as new restrictions begin to ease and it becomes possible to return to the office, we see more organizations announce that working from outside a shared workspace will continue as the new normal. As we struggle through these unprecedented times, the need for strong people-focused leadership has become increasingly clear. On the chat this morning, we have a strong people-focused leader, Mr. Kendall Dupersoy, CEO of TELEM St. Martin. Mr. Dupersoy also sits on the Canto Disaster Recovery Committee and is a key member of our coordination team. This CEO is also an avid sportsman, starting off at the age of 9 playing Little League Baseball, which offered him the opportunity to travel representing St. Martin in various Latin American and Caribbean tournaments. He also coaches when he can and officiated Little League for more than 12 years, as he firmly believes in giving back to his community. Kendall, welcome to Canto Conversations. We are honored to have you share your time with us this morning.
You're more than welcome. It's an honor for me to be here and join your Canto Conversations as a guest. Thank you.
Okay, so before we go into the conversation, I want to say a thank you to our audience for joining us every week, twice sometimes on a Tuesday and a Thursday. Please remember to mute your microphone and post your questions for Kendall in the chat. So Kendall, I want to start by asking you to tell me 2 things about yourself. What keeps you motivated in your role as one of the youngest and most dynamic CEOs in St. Martin?
I think my motivation comes from my feeling of how important telecommunications is to the general public right now. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic came about, a lot of things were moving towards the telecommunications space and area. So that motivates me to see the way that I can impact the overall economy of the island and better the lives of the people of St. Martin. So that's my main motivation. Another motivation I have too is that it's not really the norm in St. Martin for local grassroots St. Martiners to be placed in these positions in the past. So right now we have a lot of those areas where most of the government-owned entities like TELEM are headed by local grassroots St. Martiners. So I look at myself as not only motivator, but as a role model. A role model for younger St. Martins coming up that they can also achieve. So it's very important for me to be successful in this position so that they can see and say, well, I can do that as well.
Great. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the tagline, Connecting You. Very, very, very simple, but effective right now as connectivity is seen as the new currency. Can you tell us about some of the challenges you faced in keeping your customers and employees connected and safe during the pandemic?
Well, one of the things that we started prior to pandemic was an island-wide fiber to the home project, because our network, the copper network, was very old at the time, and well, it's still old. So we saw that the need to upgrade that. And while we started off that process, what we did, we said, okay, what are we doing? What are we changing? How are we going to change the marketing around it? Because as you know, TELEM does mobile, fixed, and we also do television, and voice. So we have the quad play kind of scenario. So we said, okay, what we do, we're actually connecting people. So therefore we changed the tagline to Connecting You. From a perspective of our employees, we wanted to give them like a simple way to connect to the fact that they are connecting to people. So the Connecting You was something they did not only externally, but internally as well, to make a simple tagline that will allow them to know what their purpose is when it comes to the importance of their job as employees working for TELEM.
Okay, great. How has COVID affected your organization in terms of operation and revenue? Can you give us a little insight on that?
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to revenue, of course, the person we lost about, compared to the previous year, 19% revenue in April and about 18% revenue in May. However, with the lowering in revenue, our EBITDA was not as affected because of the fact that our operating expenses were also lower. If I can get the opportunity to share my screen, I will let you see.
Yes.
I'm looking for the slide.
Okay.
You see it?
Yes, I'm now seeing it. Yes.
That's our revenue matrix. You can see from 2020, and 2019 is the orange, and 2020 is the blue line. That's our revenues in guilders, our local currency. And here you would see the revenues in collections, actually, compared from 2019 and 2020. You can see the dip in April as the island was closed at the time. So there was no real opportunity for us to do collections. But then, as you can see, thankfully, it's starting to go back up, although nowhere close to the level it was in 2019.
Yes, I agree. And most telecom companies are having had that same issues around April, May, and some of them still in June. So as the economy start to open up, we're seeing a little bit of upward movements there.
We believe that our revenue has gone almost back to normal in June. But from a strategic aspect, we believe with the economy still pretty much shut down. As you know, we're a tourism-based economy, and we only recently opened the airports and the other ports. We have a lot of our income comes from the cruise tourism. So we expect to not come to those numbers, but for now. And we also expect that if we don't get back to normalcy soon, that a lot of the local customers will not be able to do the same, spend the same amount of money on telecommunications that they usually do. So we expect a drop there. So we're making some adjustments, and later down I'll discuss some of the incentives we give to the population with discounts and other things that we've done during the last few months to enable them to still have some sort of connectivity.
Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about TELEM and disasters. You operate in an economy that's highly dependent on tourism, yet TELEM is no stranger to hurricanes. And after hurricanes Irma and Maria, TELEM was able to get their networks up and running and connecting the people of St. Martin relatively quickly. Can you share some insights on that? What were the driving factors in getting you to be up so quickly?
But the main driving factor, I always say, was our employees, the commitment of our employees to get everything up and running as soon as possible. I mean, I was so, a lot of people sustained damage during Irma, but I was so surprised when they actually came into work. You know, that's like 2 days after the hurricane passed, people came into work and we asked them, "How are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I lost everything." And they were like, "What? You know, I come to work." So I was very proud of the fact that they came into to work and be among their colleagues, because we like to look at TELEM as a family. It's not only that you're just coming and working and leaving, but we like to look at it as a family. And that was definitely showcased after Irma. In conjunction with the employees, we were able to come with the technical staff, able to come to some quick decisions on how we want to get back the mobile network up and running as fast as possible. We lost almost all of our roof sites, but what we did a quick turnaround on the roof sites, and we're able to get temporary roof sites up in about 2 weeks, and had probably about 80% of the island covered within that period. So that was very satisfying for us to have it done. And I must admit, add again how people from across the spectrum of our departments were assisting with that. Technical people were doing the technical stuff, of course, but there was also people from commercial department, people from the finance department that were pulling cables, helping all the wires. People were coming in and cooking meals so that we didn't have to go home to eat. So it was really a challenging but very rewarding time for us here at TELEM when it comes to that disaster. In the meantime, what we did, Teresa, we have tried to make the network a little bit more resilient by running fiber underground to most of our sites. We have also built a more resilient antenna that we use to try to put them on the roof site so that they can last a little bit longer. And we also have some plans in place to minimize the damage to equipment by removing some of the equipment prior to a storm so that we can then quickly put it back up once it's, the storm has passed.
Okay. So let's stay with business continuity a little. As a member of the Canto Disaster Recovery Committee and also the Canto Coordination Team, several of our members use TELEM as best practice case study when reviewing their own plans. Can you tell us how your experience in dealing with hurricanes, brutal hurricanes, has helped build that resilience in the company, and how other telecom companies can adopt some of your best practices?
I think one of the main things that we learned from Irma was the fact that you have to make you have to protect your equipment. It's very difficult to protect the radios and stuff because they're out on the wind. You can just, like I said earlier, take down some of them so that they don't get damaged, so that you can quickly redeploy them after the storm passes. But what we noticed with Irma was that we had a lot of roofs that went off from our what we call our COs, our central offices and stuff like that. We lost roofs from our central offices, and that caused the equipment to get wet. So luckily, we were able to turn them back on after, but they worked for, let's say, 3 to 4 weeks, and then after they started to fail because of the corrosion. So what we did in the meantime, we made sure that every CO is built like a bunker, you know, very small windows that are all hurricane protected, only concrete roofs, 6 inches or more. Even if the requirement was to have a zinc roof, we would put a concrete roof under it, and then because of aesthetics, change it up and stuff to make everything basically into a bunker, so we can feel confident that when a storm passes, that the equipment will be safe. We also went into a lot of power. We did a lot of alternate power, making sure that our tanks, our diesel tanks and stuff like that are filled to the rim. Areas where we know it's difficult to get to, we enlarge the diesel tanks to be able to run for up to 1 week so that we don't have to be constantly going up the hills and stuff where we have sites that are maybe a little bit in the higher elevations to have to go up there on a daily basis to refill fuel tanks. So we put larger tanks so that we can have to fill them maybe once every 4 or 5 days to a week, depending on how much equipment is located there.
Okay, great. And I know most of the members who are in charge of DRP will be listening keenly. Kendall, can you tell us some of the initiatives that you have undertaken to support citizens in your country during the pandemic?
Yes, I can, and I'll give you a quick
slide. Yes.
Yeah. There you go. So this is you're seeing this, right?
Not as yet.
Okay, let me see. Why am I not sharing?
Yes, I am.
So do you get it now?
Yes, we are seeing it.
We're seeing the activities in support of community.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a list of some of the things that we did right after. You know, we set up a free emergency number 914 that is toll free, so that people can call in and report anything related to the pandemic if they were feeling sick, if they, you know, so they can call that. That's what you're seeing, right?
Yes.
Yes. A free of charge 311 hotline for the Mental Health Foundation, because what we noticed right after the pandemic, there was a little bit increase in, because I guess of the seclusion of the population, there was an increase in some challenges in the homes. So we also set that up for them. We opened a SMS number for Corona Info that government controls, and they would then send out information that is still active to today, as well as the other 2 aspects. production of social distancing billboards to educate the population on exactly how and where and why they should remain taking the wearing of masks, etc., etc. Flyers in all three most popular languages on the island, which is Spanish, French, Creole, and of course English. We have regular community notices on our television channels. As you know, we also bought a cable TV station, so we run those there. We gave free SIM and cards and credit to all hospital and other frontline workers. We had various campaigns that we have with free top-up, double data, and extra things. And also the emergency bundle, which is some of the ads you see here now. Yes. The emergency bundle was a 750 megabyte of data and 5 minutes of call credit for free that you can use once. So if somebody was to get into a situation where they would need to make an emergency call or send a text and they had no money on their phone, they can activate the emergency bundle, and this would be totally free of charge. They would get 750 megabytes of mobile data and 5 minutes of call credit. That was specifically for emergencies only. Of course, the call credit, as you can see, we lowered our, we doubled our data packages for a period of time. So people got double the data that they were used to getting with the normal things. And some other, and then of course we also did a lot of, like I would say, donations and other aspects of the donations and such that were, how you say, like to help the community to kind of get relief from the people that were really doing a lot of work, like the community centers, the COVID relief fund, K1 Britannica, of course, those organizations were mainly doing food distribution. So we donated to them so that they could continue to distribute their food along with many of the other local government-owned companies. We had an extension of the grace period for the postpaid customers and broadband service customers so that they wouldn't have to worry about being disconnected. So we did not do disconnections in April and May for bills that were previously sent. We have caught up to that now. From a perspective of the employees, we facilitated employees with working from home. We purchased like 60 laptops and allowed the employees to work from home mostly, especially during the peak of the pandemic. We also did, after that, we did a shift where half would come into work and the half would stay home. We facilitated not only the laptops, but also if they needed additional internet access. What we're doing now, we're talking to the Ministry of Education to increase the bandwidth to all public schools and other schools as well, so that they can have a minimum of 50 megabit, because we envision that the teachers would actually go to the school and have the classroom within the classroom while allowing the students to remote into the live feed, whether it is Teams, Zoom, or Skype, whichever medium they want to use. There's an issue sometimes we have in St. Martin where some of the less fortunate people do not have the ability to have the equipment like the tablets or the laptops in order to do it. And also there's some way the parents do not have the opportunity to work from home, so they have to leave the home to go. So what they're doing as well, they say what we can do, we can let a limited amount of students, those that are in that vulnerable group, go to the school so that they have some supervision and not be home alone, while the more fortunate population can have their children do the remote learning and not come in contact with a full class of 25 to 30 students.
Yeah, and that will also allow students to social distance in the school, in the classroom.
Yes, so that's the idea. The idea is for them to be able to stay social distance from the classroom and of course wear their mask at all times.
Okay, so I want to go, you talked about grassroots and you being a role model to the local St. Martins for upward mobility in your workplace, whichever field they choose. Can you tell us, I know you did this show in the backyard, how has that show helped you to connect with the grassroots community and drive some corporate social initiatives that probably still stay with you at this time?
But in the backyard, it was an interesting experience for me because how did it happen? Back in a previous lifetime, I decided I wanted to get involved in politics. So I got involved in politics, joined a political party, and was a candidate I think it was about 29 at the time, a candidate on the list. And there was a now deceased gentleman, Mr. Ian Valls, who had this in the backyard program. And he invited some of the younger candidates to come to the program to have a little discussion after the election, to discuss the things going, to keep it active. That was his idea. I don't know how it happened, but somehow myself and Christopher Emmanuel ended up hosting the program. Ian unfortunately got ill and passed away, and we kept going. We did it for about 8 years. What you get when you host a program like that is you get a lot of people, of course, get to know you, your voice, and get to know you as a person. And they bring a lot of information to you, things that are happening in certain communities that I might not have gotten into, to see those things. So that they bring information to you. And I think that information kind of opened my eyes to what is really going on in the background of St. Martin, in the way we don't usually go, and what the challenges that some of the local people are having in there. And I think when I got to this position here, it was a very important for me to allow, because we know that telecommunication can be a gateway for success of the less fortunate. So one of the things that I think was very important was to allow access to those young people, that they also have an opportunity to have, maybe not as much, but have to have some kind of internet access that they can develop themselves and their communities in a more, productive fashion.
Yes, and that experience will be invaluable in the things that you do for the community. So with the change in market from voice to network-based infrastructure, everything is now driven by data. How do you stay ahead of the game and ensure that TELEM is always on the cutting edge of technology?
Well, one of the things we do, and I'm going to try to share my screen again. So here we have our internet usage at the beginning of the pandemic. You see the peaks, yes, going past the 8 gig part. At this time, we had about a total of 13 gig available to the island. But even prior to the pandemic, we had already begun to discuss with our IP transit providers to provide us with some additional bandwidth, because we figured it would be necessary, because in general, we all know in the telecom industry that everything is moving to data. So you're gonna have to get more and more data. What, as little as 5 years ago, 2 megabit going to a home was the norm. In most of the islands now, 16 is the norm. Some of us, we have 8. In fact, in TELEM, we're about to increase all our data packages, double the speed for a very small increase in monthly fee, because of the fact that we realize that people are using it so much more different for their normal day-to-day occurrences. So here you see the beginning. So what we did even prior to the pandemic was we got additional bandwidth, and luckily so, because you can see the peaks here. And you see, here's in March. You see it's going up in the end there, and on the 29th, 31st going up. Yes. And here you see it is in July. So the other graph, I have to explain, the other graph had a cap of 8 gig. This one is 10. So you see where it's going up all the way up to like 14 and 15 gig, peaking on the 29th of July. So that clearly shows you that the usage is increasing, and even more so that if you look at it in the beginning of the pandemic, remember everybody was home.
Yes.
And you see that this is just, the peak was just about maybe 10 at a time, but now we're getting back in July when people are back to work, and we're already peaking at about 13 or 14 gig on certain days. What we also realize as TELEM is we don't even have any tourists here right now. The majority of the hotels are not even open. So when we start to get the tourists back, we're going to need maybe another 30 to 40% of the bandwidth that we utilize right now. So we continue in discussions with our partners in the region. Some of them might even be on this call right now, that we try to allocate to get some additional bandwidth coming to St. Martin, so that we can provide fulfill the needs of the people that are using our services.
Yes, and you have to start planning for that from now.
Yes,
so
we have to do it in advance.
Yes, I want to take 2 questions from the chat, and then we'll go back to my questions. And the first one is from Umberto. Of course, he's thanking you for sharing your time with us, but he wants one question answered. What is TELEM's standpoint of view regarding mobile money as a tool to adapt to this new normality?
We do support it as TELEM. We definitely think that it is a trend of the future to be able to do mobile money. We have a lot of people from a diaspora living in St. Martin, you know, from Trinidad, Santo Domingo, Haiti, and stuff like that. So we see mobile money as a way for people to be able to use a mobile system to send money to their family members or to receive money from their family members, but also to make purchases and stuff like that. Reason being is because it's secure. It's very difficult to steal it, for instance, because it's on your cell phone. And also it's better for the vendors when it comes to being able to keep their books, more or less. And the ease of use of it is also very, very important to many people. The challenge we're having is that we might be in the telecommunications industry, see the importance of it, but sometimes the banking industry doesn't always accept the fact that we're moving away from writing checks and doing money transfers with their system. So I think there's a little bit of education that we have to implement to what we have is the Central Bank of St. Martin and Curaçao to be able to adopt these things. But we're getting there. We have discussions and we've seen some movement on their side to allow the acceptance. Of course, for them, the important part is money laundering.
Yes.
They want to make sure that everything is legit on the system. So there's certain things have to be built into the system that guarantees them that there's no illegal activity that's actually occurring on the system.
Yes, I agreed. And sensitization is so key to making sure that all the players involved are aware. So maybe on the next webinar, our upcoming webinars, we will discuss fintech and creating an environment where all stakeholders can be comfortable. So the other question is from Carlos. And Carlos is saying hurricanes and COVID is teaching us that network efficiencies and resiliency should be considered. New models like virtualization are becoming a must. Can you provide any insight into what technology changes TELEM are considering at this time?
Thank you for the question. Actually, in the last few years, we have gone 100% to a virtual environment when it comes to our servers and our platforms. And we even virtualizing our switches and stuff like that as well now. So it's still a transition period for TELEM, but we definitely feel that the ability to be virtual is important going forward. First of all, it's way cheaper, and we all know that the margins in telecommunications is getting smaller and smaller every year. So we have to find some way to be able to remain viable as a business. And virtualization, I think, allows us to achieve that by being able to provide services instead of with a lot of hardware, a lot of software. So we as TELEM definitely have a plan to go forward with as much virtualization as possible. Our RANs are all virtual now and some other things that we're doing. So we're moving forward with that definitely, Carlos. That's a goal of TELEM to within the next 2 to 3 years to be able to have a 60 to 70% of our equipment virtual.
Okay, so staying on that technological and digitalization, despite the economic impact of COVID, do you think companies will be forced to accelerate their digital transformation agenda? Not only for TELEM, but for telcos on the whole and other technology companies?
I think that the storms, the hurricanes already opened our eyes to the importance of the resiliency of the networks, the importance of the resiliency of networks and telecommunications. And I think what COVID did was showed us how important it would be to have people to do transactions via telecommunications rather than to do physical interactions. In St. Martin, right after a few weeks after the thing, we tried, for instance, some of the supermarkets tried to do like going, you send in your order via WhatsApp or email, and they would fill your order, and then they would deliver it. And we saw that one of the bottlenecks was that they didn't have a system in place to do it. So there was no system in place, no automated system in place that would allow them to do that. So I think that what they realized is the fact that they would have to put those systems in place. When it comes to the Caribbean too, and inter-Caribbean trade, I think it's very important that telecommunications get involved with inter-Caribbean trade as well, because we produce a lot of stuff in the Caribbean, but we always go through third parties. Instead of government to government conversations, we go through third parties a lot of times to get things done, which of course increases the cost. If we can do those things automated, it would save us as a Caribbean community a lot of money and time.
Okay, what about, I want to talk about collaboration between the stakeholders in St. Martin to fight COVID, government, regulators, telcos. How was that experience for you? Did you see increase in collaboration between all of the stakeholders?
I think that what I saw in collaboration for sure was within government and telecom and some of the other the stakeholders that were using it. Like earlier I mentioned, where we gave free SIM cards and connectivity to frontline workers so that they can remain in contact with their families and friends, and also giving free internet and free data and voice to others so that they can, in case of emergency, make those calls. So I think that the collaboration among the stakeholders from that aspect was very, very good. I do feel that, to be brutally honest, that there were certain aspects of society that maybe did not fully realize the impact that the COVID would have when it comes to the incomes of businesses on the island, and as well as in foreign countries, to see that we all have to tighten our belts now and can't expect to be living the same life that we were living prior to this pandemic. This pandemic is here to stay. It's not going anywhere, and I try to impress that on our colleagues, because we have to realize that it's something we have to learn to live with. So we have to find a way to work while the pandemic is still among us, because I don't think it's going anywhere. It made a resurgence in the last few weeks all over the world. In Europe, where they thought they had it under control, Spain, Germany, now they're having cases rising again because of the fact that the pandemic is very resilient and transmits so easily. So we have to learn that we have to find a way to live with it, whether that means wearing masks, better hand hygiene permanently, not something that you do for a while, but something that you do permanently so that you can continue to live what we consider the new normal.
Yes. I have a question from the chat. How is the cruise ship industry recovering in St. Martin, and was your revenue greatly affected by the drop in that area?
Last question first. Definitely, the revenue was dropped in that area, but our main revenue still comes from the local population. What we get from revenue from cruise tourism is a little bit of roaming when they send a picture somewhere, but as we in the telecommunications industry know that roaming is not as profitable as it was once back in the golden days, I like to call them, when you were getting $1 a minute or $1 a gigabit. It's now half a cent, 2 cents and stuff like that. So we were impacted. Yes, it's definitely part of that. 19% would come from the cruise industry. I can't identify the percentage right now, because I wasn't prepared. I probably can if I did some extrapolations, but it was definitely impacted. But the greater impact the greater impact that the lack of the cruise tourism has is on the ability of the local population to spend. So all the restaurants on the beach, the taxi drivers, the bus drivers, even to the women braiding hair on the beach, and all the residual economies that run from that industry, and then those people, they purchase services from the telecom and other local businesses. That's where I think the majority of the impact will be felt with the lack of the cruise tourism industry not yet coming back. And I think they said October they're going to try something, so we'll see how that works out. But I don't envision the amount of passengers per ship that we saw in the past. I think they're going to scale that back a lot to be able to better control the possibility of a pandemic breaking out on a ship.
Yeah, and I think the fear, people will have some fear and some reservations before they start cruise vacation and in the interim. So it will take a lot from the cruise ship companies to satisfy that as well. Okay, so have you developed any new services or products as a result of the pandemic? And this is for TELEM now. This is.
Well, I don't think that we developed anything based on the pandemic. But what we did though, we did expand our I like to call it a stay-at-home package, you know, with by offering like higher speeds and IPTV and stuff like that to give people a more robust and better experience when it comes to the pandemic. What we also did when it comes to installations and stuff like that, we changed a bit the procedure of our technicians and contractors entering people's homes to do installations and stuff like that. Those type of things was changed, but from a product self type of thing, I don't think that we came with any specific product that was based solely on the fact that we had the pandemic. So nothing that is directly affected like that. We have a couple of new technologies that we're implementing, but those were basically done not so much for no touch, but for speed to market type of solution.
Okay, cool. So Kendall, tell me, where do you see the future of telcos in the region, and where do you see the industry in the next couple of years?
Oh, that's a loaded question there, Teresa.
Everybody wants to know that. What does Kendall think? Where is TELEM going? Where the other region is going?
Well, I think that the industry is definitely going to change, and we're going to have to have not only rely on our service that we provide now, which is basically data and voice, but try to provide some value-added services. What we're doing as TELEM is we're looking into smart home technology, IPTV solutions, mobile, you know, be able to continue looking on your mobile device without having data charges, to continue looking at a program if you're one of our IPTV providers. There's you know, things that what we're looking at, the commercial department is looking at basically what can we provide on top of our data services. The smart home concept is something we have already begun, but we have some other initiatives that we're looking into as well to provide like some value-added services that run via our TELEM services that we provide right now.
Okay, so is TELEM this? Okay, are you planning to do this campaign in view of the difficult economic situation caused by the reduction of income on many subscribers? So he's talking about the campaign. This person is Diego, and he's talking about some of the bundles that you created for COVID, for citizens.
Yeah.
Are you going to keep those things running in spite of the economic constraints?
Well, yes, we're going to keep them running because we still believe that there's a section of the population that will be able to benefit from those. But on top of that, in discussions with government, we're also looking at some scale down packages. We're looking at probably scale down packages of as little as $10, which is in our money $18, so $10 US per month, for people that have kids at home that want it basically just for their distance learning. So we call it like a distance learning package that most people will be able to afford and things. So be able to cater to not only those packages that I presented earlier, but to have come with some other additional packages. We're even looking at doing what I like to call a prepaid internet. Just like how we have prepaid cell phones, you have a prepaid internet. So you can buy a card or go on our billing system and be able to purchase 5 gig, 15 gig, 20 gig of internet, and then be able to use that at your discretion so that you can better control what the household spends on internet active access, instead of having it as a fixed fee at the end of the month that maybe you might not be able to afford. We have a lot of people that work here in construction and other service industries, and they don't work every day, but if they work, then they can come and they can buy internet for their family. We're also doing something similar to that in our IPTV solution. Our IPTV solution, we will have the option in it that you can just purchase one channel or one show every week for, let's say, $2, instead of having to, because you're paying for it, you're not home 16 hours a day. So the 8 hours you're home, you can just go on and so it's like a real-time pay-per-view, but for public television. So those type of things would allow the population to still enjoy the services, but not have to shell out big monthly amounts on a monthly basis.
Okay, understood. So Kendall, I want to talk about Canto a little. And TELEM is one of the founding members of Canto. And since you came to TELEM, you have been instrumental in supporting the work of Canto through the different communities. A TELEM employee also heads our finance committee. What role do you see Canto playing? How Canto can support you as a Telcom member, having gone through this pandemic? What do you want from an association like Canto?
I think the most important role that I see Canto playing is what you're doing right now. Basically, the communication aspect between us and our colleagues on the different islands. Because another thing that I see going into the future is collaboration between telcos. Because using economies of scale, we will be able to better survive and provide more high-end quality services to our customers on the different islands if we collaborate to a more, let's say, deeper extent. I think Canto has the opportunity, because of all their members, to be able to facilitate that type of communication. That I see is a very important role in Canto. On top of that too, education. I've learned quite a bit before becoming the CEO at TELEM. I don't know if you know, Teresa, but I was already a board member of TELEM. So I've gone to Canto for at least the last 8 years. So I've been there for about 8 years to most of the conferences, and I learned a lot. I met a lot of people, and that kind of collaboration is always beneficial to us as telecom providers and as professionals to be able to talk. I'm peeping into your chat, and I can see some of the vendors that provide us services are advertising in the chat. So and that's a good way for us to expand. What I did too, we recently engaged a new billing platform. It's not active as yet, but we're in the process of changing to it. And I believe we were the first one. TELEM was the first one that he was able to provide that service to. And when we spoke about Canto, I invited him to Canto so that he could speak to some of the other telecom providers to see if there's a business opportunity. So not only the education, the collaboration, but also business opportunities. If we have as telecom providers a good experience with a certain vendor, we can then make sure that is communicated via Canto, and then Canto can then, not to be biased, but Canto can then inform people of the options that are out there when it comes to technologies and services that we as telecom providers can utilize.
Okay, great. Kendall, so you just gave me a free advertising for Canto. I know we're very honored to hear that. So, and that's what we try to do, provide that platform to bring all of the stakeholders together. So the education and the collaboration, that takeaway is very, very good for us. and instrumental. So I want to ask you, from a CEO's perspective, what should telco CEOs be focusing on right now?
I think what telco CEOs in the Caribbean supposed to focus on right now is their network resiliency. Is very important because we have to plan for the storms. I think the COVID pandemic has also shown us that the importance of being properly prepared for our communities to be able to do a lot of stuff online banking, online shopping, not only overseas, but also locally. So they're talking about providing the adequate amount of bandwidth and services to the different service providers on the island, banks, grocery stores, whatever, that need the instruction, and also to start to think strategically on how are we going to move forward as a Caribbean entity when it comes to providing services. A lot of the countries in the Caribbean have tourism as if not a major part, there is a part of their economy, and how can we better benefit as a community in general from tourism, because because of the small amount of, although it might be 18 million people live in the Caribbean, it's still minuscule when you look at the worldwide population. How can we benefit from the millions of tourists that visit our islands every year, and be able to exploit some revenue from them instead of having to depend solely or mostly on the revenue generation from our local communities?
Okay, great. And I think that will open up the economy as well and create a lot of local content. Online shopping, especially local entities, that's something that the region has to look forward and work towards. I want to ask you, what are your top priorities? Just 2 top priorities for TELEM right now.
Well, my main priority right now is our fiber to the home network.
Fiber to the home.
To get that done. That is way up there when it comes to the importance. I think that's going to be the differentiation factor between us and our local competition, and it would also allow us to be able to add those value-added services that I mentioned earlier in the conversation. That would allow us then to be able to provide those. If you don't have a good network, it's going to be very difficult to provide that. As you know, I mentioned before, we also provide an IPTV product, and that IPTV product has to run on good infrastructure. So everything is really based on getting our fiber to the home network completed and to all the homes on St. Martin. That's like priority number 1. From a second perspective, the fiber to the home is such an important aspect. I can't even think of a second one right now. But other than that is not directly tied into being able to provide fiber to the home service to the population. But I think if I had to pick one, it was also to provide like additional training and things so that we can keep a lot of the resources that our local engineers can do a lot of the work, and we don't need as much support from external parties. And of course, support doesn't come for free. If we can get them to get a lot of additional training to be able to provide the support locally instead of having to go outside to bring in that support, I think that would also be part of my my drive to in the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay, so we have a question for Facebook, Larry Joseph, and he wants to know if you were able to keep all your staff working during the time. And also, I want to ask you if you see your staff going through fully work from home or hybrid in the future.
Yes, we did not have any layoff as TELEM. Fortunately, we were able to recover quickly enough that it did not become a serious issue to have to resort to that. We basically did some cuts in our budget from personnel aspects. A lot of our consultancies and our vendors that we work with that have monthly arrangements, we requested small cuts for percentage cuts from there, and they were very accommodating. So that allows us to keep our staff What was your question, Teresa? You answered a second part.
Before you go into my question, I want to mention that is really good, Kendall, because most companies have had to cut in staff. So that's a success, a clear success story. My question is, going forward, do you see TELEM as having a hybrid work situation where some staff get the opportunity to work from home, or you think everyone will move back to the office, or how do you see you handling personnel going forward?
In the immediate future, Teresa, I think that we're going to bring more staff in. What we did now, because of the spike in the COVID, staff that fall into the category of danger, that are not 100% healthy, we allow them to work from home. There's very few. TELEM seems to be a very healthy environment, have a very healthy employees. So there basically wasn't that many that were thing. But for now, we're planning to continue as norm. But for the future, we don't know, because everything changes, and as we move along, maybe we might not need this big building to maintain a big building like this, and move to a smaller building to save costs, maybe, and then people can work from home. Or maybe what we did during the pandemic is we did a transit, like half home, then you come in the next week, somebody worked from home 2 weeks and they came in the next 2 weeks, like that, to make sure that they didn't interact with each other. And that was the reason why we had bought all those laptops to facilitate that working environment between the half.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that speaks a lot for the type of environment that you've nurtured in TELEM, that people-oriented, employee-oriented, family-type relationship. It's something for us to strive towards. We're running out of time now, but I wanted to ask you closing thoughts and comments. What do you have to say to your colleagues in the region, to us, to anyone? Anything. The floor is yours.
Thank you. What I would like to say, first of all, is that we are going through a very tough time right now, because the industry we are in is very important because of the aspects of the pandemic and the hurricanes that we face on an almost yearly basis. But we have to work together to be able to provide our community with the type of services that are required now. Not only the telecommunications is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity in our communities. We see that we're moving now to distance learning and so many other aspects of telecommunications that are so important. We are now becoming an essential service, and we have to work together via organizations like Canto to be able to provide that service in a cost-effective manner to our populations. We know that our income levels are not that of some of the more developed countries, but we can still, if we work together, I think, provide service to a level that would allow our people to continue to develop themselves and their communities as we move forward.
Great. Thank you so much, Kendall. This has been so educational for us at so many levels. I just have a couple of announcements to make there. Let me just double check and make sure there are no more questions on the chat, right? We've covered everything. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank our audience for this morning. On Tuesday, the 11th, which is next week, Tuesday, we take a break from Canto Conversations. I know you will miss us, and we will miss you as well. But we'll be back on Thursday, the 13th, when we welcome Dr. Marta Suarez and Dr. Lester Garcia of Facebook. The topic they will be speaking about: innovative connectivity experiences, from Wi-Fi 6 to partnering opportunities. Thank you. Remember, one of the opportunities from this pandemic, we can work from anywhere. Stay safe, stay connected with Canto Conversations. Thank you, everyone.